Good morning to you all, and this is Mr. Peter Kato, and I'm taking you through nutrition with plants. So as for today, let's dive into this thing called nutrition in plants in a nutshell. So our main objectives for today's lesson, it will be about the life processes in plants. What is nutrition? Basically, are the simple processes and the types of nutrition and plant, mainly in nutrition in plants. Why photosynthesis? Because we have seen how plants are green in color, and we want to identify what exactly makes them green and what is the importance of them being green, and what is their main importance of carrying out photosynthesis, necessary conditions, and so on and so on. Hmm. So let's dive into this thing. So usually plants are living organisms, and they usually carry out what we call lively processes. Lively processes may include nutrition, respiration, transpiration, excretion, movement, and reproduction. That for a living organism to survive, it must carry out these what we call essential characteristics of living organisms, as shown in the illustration in the first slide. So when we start into the main objective of nutrition, nutrition is mainly how an organism obtains nutrients, not feeding, but how you obtain the nutrients from the feed, from the foods you eat. That means it can be carbohydrates, proteins, etc. So the main process that happens in plants is what we call photosynthesis. So photosynthesis usually is the process by which the green plants and some bacteria use simple inorganic molecules such as carbon dioxide and water in presence of sunlight and chlorophyll to always produce what we call the starch, the form of food they need to survive, plus giving off oxygen, which we need in the environment that is used by the animals. So the steps of photosynthesis usually involve what we call the conditions. The conditions, what are those necessary components needed by a plant? That is sunlight usually, and the chlorophyll. And usually chlorophyll exists in two forms, chlorophyll A and B. But usually it is a green pigment we find into a plant, and so it's found in the chloroplast of the plant. And when we consider the raw materials, a plant to carry out this process, it usually needs what we call water. Water is H2O. It's made up of hydrogen and oxygen, and in a combination of what we call carbon dioxide, which are the raw simpler molecules found in the environment for the synthesis of their food. So when we talk about the conditions necessary, there are things that a plant can't do without. That is sunlight, chlorophyll, carbon dioxide, as we had stated below. Each of these are so important for this process to take place, but mainly the raw materials, which we had said, carbon dioxide and water, then the conditions, sunlight and chlorophyll. When you take a look at through this nutrition, different organisms carry out this nutrition differently. Mainly we are talking about plants. So we have different categories of plants and fungi. So for example, an example of a fungi, we can have a mushroom. Mushrooms also carry out nutrition, but they carry it out. They don't make their own food, but they feed on what we call dead, decayed matter by feeding in a process called saprophytic nutrition. So in this saprophytic mechanism, it involves saprophytes such as we can have the fungi, we can have the decomposing bacteria, they feed on dead, decayed matter. That's why we said here, trophic nutrition has four major types. That means these ones, they don't make their own food, but they feed on others for food. We have what we call parasitism. Parasitism, when an organism feeds on the other for food. Then we have what we call phagocytosis, where an organism engulfs the other for food. Then we have what we call saprophytes. These feed on dead, decayed matter. And then lastly, what we call horozoic nutrition, where human beings rely, where we take in materials, and we digest them into the body, then as illustrated into the diagram of plants there before. Then this is a morphology of how plants appear, what we call the shoot system and the root system. Basically, on the aerial view and under the earth's surface, what nutrients they absorb. When you take a look in that diagram, we have what we call the root hairs. If you can see them, they're obtaining nutrients and water. Then carbon dioxide enters via the stomata above the aerial surface. Then other conditions as are necessary for this process to take place. Then the external features of the plant, we have those ones. A plant is well adapted for carrying out photosynthesis. One, it has what we call chlorophyll pigment, which enables it to carry out photosynthesis. Also, it is made up of many leaves, which many leaves give it a light surface area, carrying out photosynthesis. Then it has what we call the chloroplast, which chloroplast also increase the surface area over which these materials can be absorbed and photosynthesis takes place. Then we have the applications of this nutrition. Photosynthesis is important to plants, but also it is important to the environment. One, it is a source of food to the environment. Also, it supplies oxygen to the environment. It's a source of biofuels and also carbon quenching. It helps in the removing of excess carbon dioxide from the environment. And also, plants are used for pharmaceutical processes. It is now as we watch in this video. So what exactly you are saying there, it is how water is being absorbed from the roots. Then it passes through what we call the xylem vessel, the xylem and the phloem around which make up what we call the stem, and then water is taken to the leaves, to the shoot system, where it is also lost in form of water. Then we have this
Transpiration
other
through
mechanism,
stomata.
transpiration
The
through the
dorsal
stomata. That
side
means
of a leaf
here water is
consists
being lost
of
via the
minute
stomata.
structure
With
called
the process
stomata.
of this water movement
Stomata
helps in what we
consists
call
of
opening and
a
closing of
pair of
the stomata, as you are
bean-shaped
seeing
cells
in the guard cell. The
called
stomata,
guard
recall,
cells,
is made up of two guard
which
cells
surround
that
the
can always
stomatal pore.
become large
Guard
or
cell
become small. In simple
regulate
terms, they
the
can become
opening
turgid
and
or
closing of
plasmolized.
stomatal pore.
As they become turgid, they
During
help increase on the
photosynthesis,
size of the
carbon
stomatopore,
dioxide
which you are seeing that it's
diffuses
entering
into
in
the
the red
stomata and
red carbon dioxide.
oxygen is
Then it gives
produced
out
as
oxygen,
a
which is in blue.
byproduct
Then
of
lastly, as it is
photosynthesis
giving out
and then
oxygen, which
diffuses
is in blue,
out
it also gives
through
out
the
water,
same
a process
opening
called
called stomata.
transpiration. That's what we
Water
call
vapor
opening and closing the stomata. Then lastly, they explain the mechanism of opening and closing of the stomata, which is usually brought about by turgidity and osmosis of the guard cell becoming plasmolized or turgid. When they become turgid, that means they've taken in water from neighboring epidermal cells, hence closing, hence opening, and allowing water loss and entry of mainly carbon dioxide. Then, lastly, I have some references for you. You can check them out for further studies. And please, thank you. I remain Kato. Have a nice day. Let me share the code.